Welcome to the Belmont Stakes week edition of the Friday Show, brought to you by the Jockey Club. Save the date, August 3rd, Saratoga Springs, New York, is the Jockey Club Roundtables schedule for this year on a Thursday, not a Sunday. They're breaking with tradition. I'm Ray Paulick with bloodstock editor Joe Nevills, and we are pleased to be joined by an old friend, Marty McGee, longtime Eclipse Award-winning journalist who has changed his career path, and he is now a jockey agent in Kentucky for his a nephew, right? Joe Talamo.
Nephew-in-law, so to speak. He's married to my niece, Elizabeth. But yes, nice to be with you guys, by the way.
Well, it's good to see you, Marty. We're going to talk about a few things today, including the Belmont Stakes. This is being taped on Thursday. They've canceled racing Thursday because of the smoke. I understand that there is a weather pattern coming that they think will clear out the clouds Thursday night, and it should be a go for Friday and Saturday, but at this time we don't know for sure. So just keep that in mind as we tape the show. Marty, there's been a lot going on in Kentucky. Let's talk a little bit about this move from Churchill Downs to Ellis Park. We know why they did it. There were concerns over the 12 fatalities. They're still training on the track, I believe, at Churchill Downs. So I think it's more of a PR move than anything else. But practically speaking, how does it affect people that work in the horse industry?
Well, it's definitely a PR move, Ray, because otherwise, why would you announce it on a Friday, continue to race on a Saturday and a Sunday, and all the while, even as we move to Ellis Park on Saturday, this coming Saturday, they continue to allow horses to train over the Churchill Downs racetrack. So I can come up with nothing other than it is a PR move to placate some of the so-called opposition of horse racing in general. And what it's done is just kind of made things a little tricky in terms of the logistics. Jockeys having to go down there all the time, stables relocating to a certain degree. Obviously some of the bigger stables like Brad Cox, Steve Asmussen, they have horses at Ellis and Churchill and Keeneland even. So they're spread all over the place. But some of the guys who would have gone down there for the originally scheduled start of the Ellis meet on July 7th, they're already going ahead and taking some of their horses down there. But all in all, it's just I understand the racing form and Equibase are calling it ELP as far as the designation for the races.
Thank goodness.
It's not the BAQ or anything like that. So it's just 3 weeks of Ellis Park before what we would have done otherwise.
So in terms of all the graded stakes are going to stay the same?
They are. I don't know. I haven't heard yet, since it's not my job anymore as a reporter to find this kind of stuff out. But I don't know if you're going to have to do what they do when they move turf races. Let's say if you have a grade 3 off the turf and they run it, and then you got to go to the American Graded Stakes Committee and get approval to have it regraded or whatever. I don't know if they're going to do that with those, but yes. Everything pretty much stays the same. Churchill Downs came out with a revised last few weeks of the meet and the condition book yesterday. That would have been Wednesday. And there are no Wednesdays anymore. It was going to be 5-day-a-week racing through the 4th of July. I also noticed that the 3rd of July is a Monday. I'm pretty sure they're not running that day either. But all in all, it's going to be the lock, stock, and barrel of the Churchill meet, just being run in a different place. They have had to tweak some distances, such as on Sunday the Matt Win, instead of being a 1.16 you can't run that on the 1.125 Ellis Park main track. So that is going to be a 1.125. But and there are a few others of those that they've gone through. But otherwise, they've gone ahead starting, I think, next Saturday, which would be June 17th. With making all the distance revisions and the like in the condition book.
So that kind of leads into what I was going to ask you. If I'm someone who plays the Churchill Downs spring meet, and then once that's done, kind of shuffles off from Ellis and goes plays Saratoga or something else for the summer, I'm sort of catching up with Ellis Park, what it is, what it's like. How do the two tracks sort of compare and contrast with each other in terms of layout, how the going goes there, surfaces, the like?
Well, they have that elbow chute that Saratoga revived, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, where they come out of it's like a turn and a half That's one of the things, Joe. Instead of running the mile and 16th, so main track races are either a mile and an eighth or a mile. There is nothing in between, and that is kind of a funky distance, as we all know. Coming up, Laurel Park, back when I was in Maryland, they had that shoot out of there, and I can't think of many other tracks that has that other than Saratoga and Ellis. But all in all, a lot of 6 furlong races. There's a special emphasis as we get into the Ellis part of the meet toward 2-year-old racing, particularly going short on the grass. They even have long races on the grass for 2-year-olds. So a lot of those guys I mentioned, Cox, Asmussen, Mike Maker, a bunch of them leave some of their other horses that they'd like to test, and instead of throwing them into the deep water at Saratoga and run them in the maiden races at Ellis, and they card quite a few.
I imagine this is going to test the turf course a little bit more than usual.
Yeah, you would think so. As a matter of fact, they're not starting, Ray, until I think the 15th. Would that be a Thursday? I think they're starting there's no turf racing this weekend at Ellis. I don't know why, but again, it's not my job to ask those kind of questions anymore. But that's the way that's going to go. They're hopefully they will meet out the turf races so that they can conserve it over this longer period.
How does it change your job as a jocks agent moving from Churchill to Ellis in sort of sudden fashion?
Not really a whole lot, Joe, because Joe Talamo and I have been doing a lot of traveling up to Keeneland and the Thoroughbred Training Center. I only went to the races at Churchill beyond the Derby, I think, twice. Most of my job is out in the morning, early at Churchill or the Spectrum, or like I said, we've probably made 5 or 6 trips a piece up to Lexington for various reasons, just try and hustle some mounts. So as far as Joe goes, though, he has to, like Ron Anderson, you see, I wish I could clone these guys and have them in different places at once. But when you ride races, you have to actually go where they're running the races. So Joe will actually have to go to Ellis quite a bit. And we've been going to Indiana. He's ridden probably 6 or 7 days up there, and he's actually we're taping this on a Thursday. He has a couple miles up there. So his car is really logging the miles right now. Mine only somewhat.
I go back to when Joe was a brash, talented apprentice out in California and did very well out there, rode for top stables. Then he decided to come to the Midwest. What's your goal with Joe right now? Because he's not at the top of the standings, but he once was. And so what's your job and your goal with Joe?
Rebuild that business. Try and get him back in with some of the guys he's ridden for before. I was looking at some of his mounts from back in 2020. He actually made the move in the winter of 2020, just at the onset of COVID, and he went to Oaklawn Park first before he and Elizabeth moved here to Louisville. And he was riding horses like Mucho Gusto and Clariere and some of the other big names you might find. And right now, those are hard to come by. Now, in our defense, and his defense, and mine, it's a tough colony here. I mean, you've got Luis Saez, who normally wouldn't be here except for these purses. Tyler Gaffalione his record speaks for himself. You've got 20, 25, 30 really good riders here, and I think a lot of that is due to the contraction of racing in general. Arlington, which once was a very viable entry on the national scene, is no longer. California is not the place it once was. Joe himself came from California. Guys like Martin Garcia and other trainers and jockeys have come here. So you've kind of got the cream rising to the top here, and cracking that top 10 or whatever here is a very difficult assignment. There's a lot of jocks. Brian Hernandez, Adam Busquetza, some of them sometimes won't have any mounts on a card, and that's really due to how laden this jockeys colony is with very, very good riders.
So that kind of rolls into something I'm curious about. You're still, you've been doing this for a couple, 2-3 months now?
Right about 30 days. Just
about a month. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some of the lessons that you've learned so far about being a jockey's agent? What's kind of the learning curve been for you?
Well, fortunately, I graduated from University of Kentucky in May of 1982 and didn't start in this business until March of 85. So for almost 3 years, I worked for my dad in sales. So you're basically trying to sell somebody. He owned a chemical water treatment chemicals is what we sold, and getting those accounts was really hard. So I got a lesson in taking no and taking it gracefully. I'm getting a lot of no's from trainers. I found out that not only do you have to develop relationships with trainers, which I already had, of course, and owners, and that's helped a lot. I've had a handful of guys really go out of their way to help us. But the other thing, Joe, is getting in with the other agents. And I sense sometimes that there are alliances. There's this kind of cliquey kind of thing. I've not had a couple of the agents throw off anything to me. Not that I'm asking for anything. It's, it's a dog eat dog world out there. But I think a lot of times if you have some of the other agents help you, that goes a long way.
So basically, like, none of my guys can take this. Do you and Joe want it, sort of stuff?
That kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. I've had about a half dozen agents really go out of their way to help me on that too. But, in the end, you're all on your own. It's everybody's an independent contractor, and we're all going for the same thing. So right now, I'm very pleased. We've won 8 races for 7 different trainers. My brother, Paul, is the only one that we've won more than one for. And it's like I tell Joe every day, one barn at a time, one day at a time. Let's just, at some point, hopefully this is going to get going really well. And like Ron Anderson told me Derby week, he said, this is going to be a process of several months for you to attempt to restore, to get his business back to where it is. And we've been working hard at doing just that.
What are some of the tools that have helped you, having a long career as a writer, handicapper? What are some of the tools that have helped you, and what are some of the tools that you've had to sort of bring into your skill set?
One of the things is scheduling, Ray. Like as a writer, having done Derby so much, the Derby, back in August, that the next May it's going to be May the 5th and stuff like that. So I can tell you that people asking me if I can do June 22nd. That's a Thursday, and there might be a conflict there between Ellis and Indiana. So a lot of us, the thinking ahead, you're way ahead in terms of the timing of where you're going to be and what time and everything. The other day we had it was last Thursday. We got beat a nose in 2 different races. One was the 2nd at Indiana. Then Joe drove down here to Louisville and rode the 6th at Churchill and got beat a nose in that. Both of them were for Tommy Drury, and both were for Claiborne Farm. So that was a tough one, especially the second one. But anyway, there's going to be days like that, and you just got to learn. I think one of the things as a writer and a gambler, people know I like to bet on the races, and you get used to losing. I remember one day at Keeneland, Tom Hammond, he used to sit right next to me up front there in the press box at Keeneland, and we were cheering for a race. Come on, get up! Got beat a zop. And I sat down, and about 5 minutes later, Tom goes, well, you took that pretty well. I said, Tom, I'm used to it. You get used to losing in this game.
You turn the page. Right.
You do. You have to. Otherwise, what are you going to do? Cry about it all night? No.
So how do you sell Joe? What are his, does he have, certain riders are gate jockeys, certain ones ride turf better than others, sprint, distance? What's your selling point on Joe?
He's good. I don't see him make mistakes, or not many. He is just strong. He's confident. He's got a lot going for him. I really truly believe, Ray, and this is one of the 13 reasons I switched jobs. Number one was I was just tired after 38 years of riding. I just had to get out. And but he is a very good jockey. He has shown that for years. He's been riding since he was 16. He rode with the big boys out in California for 13 and change. And there's numerous examples you can point to. I wouldn't want to categorize him as I think he's good at everything, getting out of the gate. To me, my brother and I talk about smoothing a horse, about getting it into that real nice energy saving rhythm early in a race. And Joe is very good at that. So saves things for the end. So he really does sell himself too. He's such a likable young guy, and owners and trainers really seem to take to him. And I've had more than more than a few responses when I introduce myself. They go, "Oh, we love Joe," so that goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned some of your interactions with other jockey agents. Can you talk a little bit about who has helped you along in the education process in this particular profession?
Well, Ron Anderson and I have been friends. Both my sisters, Susan and Amy, lived out in California starting in the mid '80s, and within a few years they were pretty close with Ron, who back then might have had he had Toro to begin with, but he ended up having Stevens and Bailey and Gomez and Antley, and now he's got Joe.
I've heard of him.
And Johnny and Frankie and whoever. But he has been advocating for me for many years to get into this. And I just told him that I needed to need to do it my way. And finally, it came the time that I said, let's do this. So he has been very helpful. I've had guys like Steve Bass and Jimmy McNerney's helped me a lot. He's the announcer at both Ellis and Turfway, but he's also been a veteran jocks agent, since he was a kid. And I've had 2 or 3. Joe Paulick's helped me. A number of guys have. Let's put it this way: these purses are so big. There's enough to go around for everybody. I'm not a greedy guy. I just want Joe to be happy, and a lot of people in my family are really interested in how we do, and so that's a pretty big burden. I want to do everything right, keep him happy, and just do what we can do.
Well, let's switch topics and use your skill as a jocks agent to look at the Belmont Stakes, and let's just pretend that no riders have been named on any of these horses, and you've got first call. Where are you going to go here?
You're supposed to say Forte, but I don't know. What about my skills as Hermes? Ray, can I use those? The layoff, it just, I think Eddie DeRosa put on Twitter something about how the layoff horses into the Belmont haven't fared that well. You just got to think that taking 2 to 1 or so on Forte is not the way to go here. So if I had to ride somebody, I'd probably do the other Todd, that being Tappet Trice, or both of Brad Cox's horses, Hit Show and Angel of Empire. I thought they both ran big races in the Derby, and they've had the 5 weeks to get ready. So I think that Tappet Trice or one of the 2 Coxes would be the way I'd go.
What do you think about Arcangelo? Pop that big buyer figure in the Peter Pan. One by head there. Clearly likes the Belmont surface, and the Peter Pan winner has done historically pretty decent in the Belmont.
Yeah, I haven't seen Javier Castellano. I've got to be pretty friendly with him. You see him around Keeneland and Gulfstream, all those winners, and I haven't seen him since then. I would like to see him win his Belmont, break the skein the way he did in the Derby and the Belmont. I don't know about him though, Joe. I was having to try and size up how the pace is going to unfold. I guess that National Treasure will try and walk the dog again the way they did the Preakness. I don't necessarily see that happening. And one of the horses to come get him, sooner than later would be Arcangelo. So I would give him a chance in there. But this race really does look wide open to me, and I would definitely take a stand against the favorite because of that.
Same.
So the favorites have won the last 3 Belmonts, 4 of the last 5, and they finished first or second in the last 6 years. So it's a race that seems, at least in the last few years, has been very good for favorites. I agree with you though. I don't really, maybe Forte is this good, but there's been a lot of talk about the other Todd Pletcher horse, Tappet Trice, and looking at the Derby, I just didn't like the way he ran at all. He was last early. But he never really rallied down the stretch, I didn't think. And, watching between him and Angel of Empire, I think that's, to me at least, a no-brainer. I think Angel of Empire is going to run a bigger race than Tappet Trice. And you mentioned Hit Show. I thought he ran a deceivingly good race. He really made a move into a pretty brisk pace going into the far turn. Didn't have enough to sustain it, but if he gets into that smooth rhythm like you're talking about, with a horse, he looks like a horse that could go that far.
Yeah, he could. Tappet Trice, I was in Tampa when I was still working for that publication called Daily Racing Form, back to watch the Tampa Bay Derby. He was flying. I mean, it was amazing. And then the Bluegrass, He really kicked home too. This horse likes to run down the stretch. So I really, and it's got Todd written all over it. So I really think that Tapit Trice is the one to beat. But, again, I think that Hit Show and Angel of Empire, if they run back to their Derby efforts, they'll be right there too.
And not to mention
is that the Hermes pick then? Is that the Hermes pick?
Yeah, I'm going to go with it. I'm going to go with a 2-7-8. Yeah.
And not to mention, I mean, it's Tapit Trice is a Tapit. We know what the Tapits do in the Belmont Stakes. All they do is win. And I mean, on that note, Tapit Shoes is right there too. I think his pedigree is probably the best thing going for him, but you got to pay attention to Tapits in the Belmont. You just have to. The last decade has shown us that.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like he's just crying out for more ground.
Yeah,
we'll get it. Yeah, so and the price.
And not only the Tapits, but Todd Pletcher's record is as bad as it is in the Derby. It's pretty darn good in the Belmont, and I can't understand it. Can you? Why one is so bad and the other is so good?
Well, I mean, his Belmont horses, I bet if you looked at an aggregate odds line on it, I mean, he's run a lot of long shots in the Derby, trying to throw something up against the wall and get something to stick. And when it comes to the Belmont, I would think that his horses were lower odds because they're a little more logical. Everybody wants to win the Derby, and Todd's done it twice, but it's taken him, 64, 65 starters to get it.
Yeah, I think that you're right, though. I think the Derby, he does a great job for his owners that want to have a horse in the Kentucky Derby. Mm-hmm. He gets them there, and a lot of them, honestly, probably didn't really belong.
Right.
And a lot of his owners really want to win the Belmont, too. I mean, we know how badly Mike Rapoli wanted to win that one with Mo Donegal. That's, he has a lot of New York-based connections where winning the Belmont is, an especially high prize.
Well, let's hope the smoke clears and we have a great weekend of racing starting Friday at Belmont. Big stakes card on Friday, in addition to Saturday's Breeders' Cup-like program. I mean, it's just one of the best days of racing all year. Marty, we really appreciate you joining us this week on the Friday show. Good luck to you and good luck to Joe Talamo. We'll see you at the racetrack, and thanks to the Jockey Club for their sponsorship of the Friday show, August 3rd, Jockey Club Roundtable. We'll see you next week. Thanks again, Marty.
Thank you, guys.
Equitaps is a free service that enables veterinarians, trainers, and other treatment providers of all racehorse breeds to record and report treatment records to the appropriate commission or jurisdiction. For thoroughbred racing, Equitaps is integrated with the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority. To learn more about Equitaps, email help@equitaps.com.
Support award-winning independent horse industry journalism and become a Paulick Report Insider on Patreon. For as little as $5 a month, insiders get access to exclusive Q&As with Paulick Report staff, insight behind our editorial process, exclusive opinions and on-site analysis, Paulick Report merch, and more. This is not a paywall. The website you know and love will always be the same. But if you want more, and you want to make our coverage even better, visit patreon.com/Paulick Report and become a Paulick Report Insider today.